Oh,
Okay, so another week in college football in the books, and here we are on a Monday to recap it all. I'm joined as always by Preston Grant, the PG Show, and Chris with the Horns Down podcast. Gentlemen, where can the people find you?
Yeah, y'all can find me at the PG Show on YouTube, Google, Apple, or Spotify on the podcast platforms, or you can find me on Twitter at the PG Show _. We do a lot of fun player interviews. They have slowed a little bit down during the season, but I expect them to pick back up during bowl season and the off season. Go ahead and come check us out.
hey, you guys can find me at Chris with a K. You see it on your screen. You can find us at the Horns Down Pod as well. Horns Down Podcast is on YouTube and we're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. So definitely follow us. Shout out to my guys at Seth Oliveris. Definitely follow him. All of the Texas content that you want to have, it's there. It's there. Both channels spread the love. So yeah. So holla at us.
Yeah, always a good time, guys. And look, we got a lot to talk about, right? To the unassuming eye, this would have seemed like a quiet weekend within college football, but to the absolute just diehard fans like us, it was just another weekend of absolute chaos. You know, Oklahoma showed up, really took care of business. We're gonna get to that, but before we can get to that, there's a game I really want to talk about, right? And that's that Texas A&M Miami game. That was the game I had as my game of the week. A game that was a little bit anticlimactic based on how I think a lot of people, including myself, thought it could go down. Exiting that game, what are your takeaways, right? Was that more good Texas A&M, bad Miami? What were your takeaways? Because Texas A&M had a lot go wrong and they still pulled out with the victory. PG, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I've got this coming out later, but this was a grueling game to watch. It was slow. It wasn't your typical college football game where you see scoring up and down the board. It did look more of a defensive battle, or was it just Miami couldn't get down the field and score? Even though Miami outgained Texas A&M, it didn't look like Tyler Van Dyke had it together. And, I believe if he's able to get it to his receivers, be a little bit more accurate. And he went 21 of 41. Maybe if you complete an extra 5 or 6 passes, I believe this game probably shifts like a whole different direction. And I'm still not sold on Texas A&M and what they've got at the quarterback position and their offense, because it doesn't seem like they can move the ball very easily. And I get it. We'll hear the excuses of, hey, like we had a wide receiver suspended and never. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't think Max Johnson's going to be able to get the job done. I don't feel like he's as fast as Haynes King or as versatile in the run game. He's definitely a better passer, but I feel like in today's game of college football, to be a successful team, you have to have a quarterback that is mobile. So you got to have that dual threat guy. And I don't think Max Johnson or Hanks King is there. And quite honestly, it's Connor Weigman's true freshman season. We saw what that was like at OU. And this is what I've been preaching to Clemson fans. You can't just throw a true freshman out there, even though they might have a ton of talent, and expect them to go out there and dominate every single game. They're going to have hiccups and they're going to make true freshman mistakes. So ultimately, I just thought this was a really sloppy, scrappy game. Honestly, Miami has put up 2 not so great weeks. Texas A&M has just put up 3 straight not great weeks, and I include that same Houston State game because I felt like they should have been able to blow them out 31-0. I don't consider as a blowout for that game. So I'm not sure where these two teams are going to go this season. I think Miami's probably got a higher ceiling than Texas A&M, just because Texas A&M, I believe, has a harder schedule.
Good point. Chris, what were you thinking?
I think one of the, I guess my biggest takeaway is that the more talented team actually won for once. Because with Cristobal, I just feel like there's a certain style, a certain brand of football that you think that you're going to get, or excuse me, that you believe that you're going to get consistently, right? And you thought this Miami team would come in there and probably be the more disciplined team or whatnot. But um, they're coming off of kind of a poor performance, a sluggish performance against the team that they played before they took on Texas A&M. I forgot the name of the team, but at the same time, it wasn't a great performance there. But at the same time, I just expected Miami to go in there, especially with Tyler Van Dyke, who everybody from national commentators to just the casual fan alike have basically, boasted about him during the entire summer, saying that he's a top round, like a top first round talent at quarterback.
I
So
never said that, but I
I've
was
heard
very
some
high
people.
on him.
I've heard some people, but at the same time, a lot of people were high on him. So you thought that they would be able to go in there and do what Miami was supposed to do, which was win, but they didn't. It looked like, I guess you could say, if you're a Texas A&M fan, it looked like they played inspired, I guess, or they played like they had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. This game actually meant something to them, right? So especially coming off the loss to Appalachian State, off of all of that, but it the amount of first downs that Miami had, but they weren't able to score a touchdown, it's just mind-boggling. Like, what the hell was happening out there? What was going on? What did Texas A&M do so well that kept you out of the end zone? So I don't necessarily know if this game told us that, hey, Texas A&M is somebody to reckon with, but it definitely, I don't know. It just both teams didn't play their best game, but I mean, eventually Texas A&M was able to pull it out. But Miami had their chances to stay in the game, but they could not capitalize on anything.
Yeah, and I'm gonna answer one of the questions in the comments, or a comment. Keaton says, I disagree with 38-0 not being a blowout. Keaton, in practice and in score, I agree with you. 38-0 is a blowout. But to PG's point, if you watch the game, the scoreboard was not indicative as to what actually occurred on the pitch that day, right? Like, that 38-0 looks like it's a great win for Texas A&M, but if you watch that game, it was not a 38-0 performance. They struggled much more than I think a lot of people thought. Here's where I will give Jimbo a little bit of credit here, right? Because they go into this game, PG, you alluded to it, they not only have Denver Harris out, they have Marshall out, they have Evan Stewart out, they have another individual out, they have 4 guys out. And leading up to this game, you have Denver Harris thinking he's Dominic Toretto at College Station, zooming through a parking garage, doing Lord knows what. Then he likes the tweet that Josh Pate's segment talking about Jimbo's offense expired in 2014, and then they sneak out. Through all of that, and through the 2 targeting calls, which were absolutely targeting calls, those were the correct calls, Texas A&M still found a way to win. So in that regard, I do have to tip my hat to Jimbo Fisher, because in a week where everything went wrong, they somehow figured out a way to win. And as always, winning is the most important thing. I'll give you that. Here's where I completely agree with the 2 gentlemen who went before me. The offense remains underwhelming. Here was my biggest complaint with Jimbo in the video I did. Jimbo Fisher is an offensive head coach. The problem is every year at Texas A&M, and guys, correct me if you disagree with me, I can't remember a Jimbo Fisher coach Texas A&M where I was more scared of the offense than I was the defense. Their defenses always, to me, are much more stout than their offenses have been through his tenure.
So I would jump in there and say that's not for a lack of weapons. I think one of the problems was that we had it was always Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond was unpredictable from game to game. You didn't really know what what kind of Kellen Mond you were going to get. Some of like the Mississippi States of the world at those times during those years, not like this year or whatever the case may be, but whenever they would string a couple of games together, like I don't know the schedule from last year or whatnot, but let's say like Kentucky, a Missouri, a Vandy, stuff like that. That's whenever they would play their best. Spotlight wasn't on them. Nobody, and pretty much everybody had already counted them out or whatnot. And then they surface, and you're like, oh snap, they're 7-2 or whatever the case may be. You get what I'm saying? So they were able to kind of go off the grid, under the radar a little bit, but you didn't really know what Kellen Mond was going to give you. So the offense didn't really scare you all that much. When you go back to the Clemson games that they played, I think that first Clemson game was kind of, I mean, you could obviously tell who the better team was. The second Clemson game in Texas A&M, that still wasn't really that close. It was just the fact that Clemson couldn't offense stalled a bit at times, even with Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, Kellen Mond was just too unpredictable.
Yeah, but you know what's crazy? He is one of the top, statistically wise, one of the top quarterbacks for Texas A&M in their history. And to your point, Chris, when we look, it's not like Jimbo Fisher hasn't been bringing in top 15 recruiting classes, top 10 recruiting classes. The talent is there. It's never come together. The reason why, if you're Texas A&M, you're happy you get the win because you played a ranked Miami team, but you don't leave that game without questions, right? Like A&M was excited for this game because it was a really good opportunity to answer questions from the loss to Appalachian State. You get out with the win, but I don't think they answered the questions they set out to answer. Now, on the flip side here, if you're Miami, that was a tough outing, right? Because PG, I completely agree with you. They had opportunities to win this game over and over again. And Chris, to your point, I was someone who was very high on Tyler Van Dyke. I made a video talking about this could be someone who could contend for being the top quarterback in the ACC. And it was not a great performance. I'm really interested in the Miami offense moving forward. Josh Gaddis is now the offensive coordinator there, came over from Michigan. Michigan had a top 20 offense last year. So I'm interested to see if all that translates because Tyler Van Dyke is very talented. The rushing attack for Miami was getting it going at the first part of that game, but ultimately good win by Texas A&M. I'm really interested in their game this weekend, though, guys. I know Friday is our game or is our stream where we preview the week, but A&M takes on Arkansas this weekend. Those are two programs that are going to be looking to make a statement in that game. That is going to be one where we have to keep an eye out. Now, I've kept the people waiting. I've kept both of you gentlemen waiting long enough. I want to hear about y'all's takeaways from the Oklahoma game, going to Lincoln, absolutely blowing the doors off of Nebraska, leaving with, I mean, quite frankly, very few to, if any, questions whatsoever. Chris, I'm going to start this one with you. What are your takeaways from that game this weekend?
Impressive victory. And the reason why it was impressive is simply because when's the last time OU won a game like that they were expected to win in that fashion, right? So you're leaving Lincoln just thinking to yourself, hey, the sky could be the limit for this team. There's still a lot of things to fix on both sides of the ball, but at the same time, that's just us not being satisfied. Dylan Gabriel with some of the miscues, but then again, like I said, it's hard to really fault him when one, he's not turning the ball over, and two, just knowing that us OU fans are pretty spoiled as far as quarterback play, right? But when you look at the offense as a whole, once you saw some of the things, one of the most impressive things about that game, to be honest with you, is that you didn't have to show all that much. As much as people were saying, oh, well, he finally took the gloves off and all the rest of the stuff of the offense, I still think that they were able to keep it pretty vanilla. And you're not going to be able to see just from the tape for these 3 games, you're still not going to be able to see, I think, a complete offense or what Levy really wants to install. And then also watching the game again, kind of listen to some more pods on it or whatnot, you see OU go to you said 3-3-5. I mean, they're out there running a different defense than what you've seen the past 2 games, which is pretty much like a base 4-3. You're able to still get home. You're able to dominate the line of scrimmage. Just the fact that you were able to go to Lincoln and do exactly what you were supposed to do, that's the most impressive thing about this team. Why? Because it shows that this team is mature and that this team actually pays attention to detail and is going to take care of their assignments and play sound football. That's all that you can ask. That's all that we've ever asked from our defense for these past several years, from dating back to all the national championship teams, right? In the Lincoln Riley era. I've heard it today on some spaces and some other stuff that Kansas State is going to be the actual game that tells everybody about OU. But I think that OU didn't send a statement to the nation, but they did put a lot of people on notice that, hey, we didn't go anywhere. We're still here. And there's a lot of talent around here, and you're starting to see Venables get the best out of all that talent.
Now, PG, before I let you go, I do have one quick comment here because I disagree with you in one area, Chris. I get it. It was Nebraska. Nebraska's not a world beater. And before this, I admit it. I've been wrong on Nebraska up to this point. This was a team I was very excited to see. It's not about who they played. It's about how they played, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That was a statement win. Now, and make no mistake, I'm not saying that was a statement win in saying Oklahoma is destined for the national championship this year. Oklahoma is destined to win a playoff game this year. There's a long season ahead of us. But that was a statement win. Like, make no mistake, as someone who's from the outside looking in, that a statement was sent through that win because of how you got it, right? That is very important. I always say this, no matter who you play, there's a lesson to be learned. Apocalypse, by the way, your comment about the wide receivers, I meant to say something. I think you're 100% right. That they need more wide receiver help at Miami, and it didn't hurt that Restrepo went down. That was tough. PG, I'm interested in hearing from you because I know you have a lot of takeaways from this game.
Yeah. So I really loved it. And I want to talk about this before I get into the OU Nebraska game. And so many people are discrediting Oklahoma with playing Kent State. And then they're like, oh, well, Nebraska's not any good. Well, Kent State for the past 2 years has either been the best offense in the country or been top 5. And that OU defense went out there and dominated the game. Nebraska this year has been putting up like 40 plus points a game. And what did they go do? They went out there and they dominated the game. They controlled it, which is something that we necessarily haven't seen from Oklahoma in the past, 7 to 10 years. This is an Oklahoma team that you'd go up against a really good running back like Anthony Grant and they'd give up 150 plus yards, right? That game could have been a 49-35 victory. Right? That's what we typically would have seen. I think what a lot of people saw on Saturday with this Nebraska game is they saw an Oklahoma team that can not only come out there and score whenever they would like, but they can also control the game on the offensive side, which is something Lincoln Riley has tried to do, but wasn't very successful at. And then they can control the ball on the defensive side of the ball as well. Right? They can create turnovers. They can get to the quarterback. They can continue to apply that pressure and they can dominate. And I think that's one key takeaway that I think we really need to talk about with Oklahoma as they go into the Kansas State game, because if they're able to go in and do what they did to Nebraska, to Kansas State, like I think the ceiling is really high for Oklahoma because that means you got a really good defensive line that can go in there and stop the best of the best at the running game. And I say that because Kansas State has Deuce Vaughn, who could potentially go win a Heisman this year. Now, with Oklahoma, I did like how we got to see Kanak and maybe a coming out party for him. I think definitely over the next 3 years, he's going to be tremendously good at that cheetah role. Right?
Yeah, he's tailor-made for it.
Yeah, Deshaun White's heading out this year. I would assume Harrington's also going to head out this year. So Jaron Kanak next year is going to be able to step in, and you never know. Maybe some games this year, Kanak fits better in that cheetah role, depending on who you're playing. If you're playing a super mobile quarterback.
I was just going to say, I think Harrington stays. I think Harrington's probably going to stay another year.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know with this defense, right? They could go have, really great years, and BV could tell them, hey, go do your thing. Right? You never know. But one of the things that I wish we could see from this Oklahoma team going forward is just a little bit more consistency from Dillon Gabriel. We see him make NFL style passes in the game and complete them. But then we see moments where he overthrows his receiver or he underthrows the receiver. And I just need him to be a little bit more consistent in those passes. And, potentially if he's a little bit more consistent, you could be talking about Dillon Gabriel as a Heisman contender. And another thing that I really noticed in this game specifically is how smart David Agwebu is, because that man is out there calling all the plays on the defensive side of the ball. He's putting people in the right position. People are coming to him, asking him, where they need to be at on the field. And I think we're underselling how key of a resource David Agwebu is to this defense. So overall, I really liked what I saw on Saturday, and I'm really excited what we potentially could see this Saturday against Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas State's going to be such an interesting game. One of the games I've been talking about for a while I'm interested in, mainly because of coaching, right, is I can't wait to see y'all take on Baylor, right? And it's because, Chris, I'm a big fan of Dave Aranda's scheme. So any offense that starts looking good in the Big 12, my first inclination is going to be like, I can't wait to see how Aranda schemes for him. It's just going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited. I'll be the first to say I'm actually excited for the Week 5 matchup between O State and Baylor, because O State looks to have finally have, hey, I'm really critical of Spencer Sanders, but Spencer Sanders looks to have put it somewhat together, right? So you're excited to see what they have in the first real matchup against Baylor at Baylor and Waco, coming off a bye. So you want to talk about chess matchups? I think that'll be pretty interesting. Gundy and the boys against Aranda. But man, just to go back to this game right here, I think PG hit it on his head. You want to see some of those miscues, right? The pass to Weiss, the skinny post to Farouk. But I think those things are going to come. Talking to my uncle, he said, "Hey, I get it. I would like for Gabriel to be more accurate on those passes, and I like for him not to take those unnecessary sacks." But he said, Week 5 should tell us everything we need to know about Gabriel and his team going forward, because if those tendencies haven't ironed themselves out, then that's something that we're going to have to deal with. So I'm going to give it to about Week 5, and we'll go from there.
Completely agree with you there. Completely agree with the Week 5, and that's something I've echoed as well when we've talked.
Yeah.
I love that.
The narrative is there was all around this game. To be honest with you, you knew they were going to come out there and try to throw a haymaker in the first drive. This offense still is averaging around like 400 something yards per game. I mean, this offense was still putting up numbers, and let's just be real. I don't think there's anybody on this panel who discounts or discredits anything that Casey Thompson has done in his career as a starter, whether it's at Texas or Nebraska. I think that, to be honest with you, he kind of like Spencer Rattler. He's never really played with a great offensive line. Does that make sense? Because I feel like if you give Casey enough time and help, then he would be able to make all the throws out there.
Casey reminds me a lot of Spencer Sanders.
Yeah.
I think they're very similar quarterbacks in that, like, one sequence, you're going to love what you get. I mean, you're going to get a dial, but then it's what are you going to get the sequence after that, right? Yeah. That, to me, is the biggest question with Casey.
I think Matt down there in the comments, he has a good about the Tulane one. I think I wouldn't necessarily say they exposed him, but I definitely think that you saw some things that were kind of eye-opening, because coming into the season, I thought that would be more of a high-powered offense, not because of the weapons that they have on the perimeter, but if you think about it, Deuce Vaughn and Adrian Martinez are both able to run, right? So you thought that they'd be able to kind of have more of a power spread game and be able to really do things. I don't know. What I do know is this right here, is to go back to your initial point. Coaching is going to be really key in this game, because Kleiman, as much as I hate to say it, he's a damn good coach. He's another damn good coach. And to be honest with you, I know we've all talked about Gary Patterson, but hey, Kleiman may be another coach that could be eyeing that Nebraska job as well. Is Kansas State still a stepping stone, or is Kansas State somewhere that he wants to be at?
That's an interesting point. And Frightening, this is an interesting question before we move off, because I know Frightening and I were commenting back and forth in one of my preview videos, and we were talking. I didn't know who Nebraska was, right? And in the video, I talked about, like, based on last year, I knew that they were going to have a lot to replace on defense, but they did a lot of good work in the transfer portal. And I know that they didn't have a top 5 recruiting class, a top 10 recruiting class, but when you look at that recruiting class, you got to like some of the pieces they got, including Anthony Grant, the number 1 JUCO running back in the nation, who to this point in the season has been a shining star in that Nebraska offense. I mean, he really has been the offense. And Frightening and I, we were kind of wondering what Nebraska would look like without Frost. Wondered if it would be a closer game. And to his point, he commented up earlier, he asked whether or not we thought that Nebraska would be inspired or look better, or if they folded. I think the answer is Nebraska folded, but it wasn't that they folded on their own, right? They came out, they struck, Oklahoma punched back, and Just like that famous Mike Tyson quote, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Like that's what made the folding happen. Going to be interesting to see. Before we can really dive deep into some of the other interesting things, because we have people talking about where Oklahoma should be ranked, and we're going to get to the AP, we need to stop in the SEC for a bit. Because Alabama was coming off of a week against Texas where they had a real close call. I mean, Texas played them about as well as anybody. And one thing we do need to understand about the Longhorns, gentlemen, both of you in front of me will know this better than anybody. They play to their opponent. Right. It doesn't matter if you have the Longhorns and they've won 3 games that year. If they play Oklahoma, they're going to play them close and they're going to look like a team that's won 8-9 games. That's just what Texas does. So going to ULM, obviously we all expected Alabama to win. There were some things we needed to work through, and leaving that game, do I feel better? In areas, do I still have questions? A healthy amount. Bryce threw 2 interceptions. PG, you and I talked about this. One of them is an interception. It'll go down as an interception, but man, we need to kind of revise how we do interceptions, because that was a ball that hit the receiver, both of his hands, and it just almost stayed right there, and the defender picked it out of midair. And that's not on Bryce, but regardless.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you on that. It is a stupid stat for quarterbacks to get penalized for when the receiver is the one that causes the interception.
Frightening knows exactly what I'm talking about, and now he's you already know Frightening. The thing for me is I'm still holding out hope. There's an individual for Alabama's offense. I'm not going to go into too much depth because I'm going to make a standalone video about it, but was one of the more explosive wide receivers in the nation. How good will he be? We don't know. But Tyler Harrell averaged 30 yards per reception through a portion of last season. He's out with injury, and we really don't have that deep threat outside of some of the younger guys, and they're just young, right? Like we've seen Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice get separation and then not be able to complete the pass. Alabama right now, defensively, I don't have any questions about that defense. The DBs we have an open competition that needs to be settled. I have the guys I want to play, but I'm not Nick Saban, and I'm not going to pretend like I know better than Nick Saban.
Who do you want to play?
Personally, I like Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid as my 2. I think Terrion Arnold, to this point in the season, you'd be hard-pressed to say he might not have been the most consistent defensive back when he's been on the field. Kool-Aid has been up and down, very talented, very excited for his future. But defensively, I have no problems or no qualms with Alabama, right? Offensively, I have questions. They revolve around Bill O'Brien. I want to open it up to you guys, though. What are your thoughts? Week 3 with Alabama, where do you see this program right now?
I potentially see them losing to Arkansas if they don't fix their problems. I think you got to fire Bill O'Brien, or you got to bring in Scott Frost to help him out as an analyst, because this offense, I feel like you can't go and play another SEC team like Georgia or Arkansas and play the same way you did against Texas, because as talented as Texas is, they're not a program that's as put together as Arkansas and Georgia are. So I think Alabama's in trouble there if they don't fix their offense before that game or before either of those games.
I think that's fair. And to your point, Arkansas, if we go back to even that Mac Jones year, right? If we look at all the games Alabama played, who was the one team that limited that Alabama squad more than anybody? There's really 2. One of them will surprise all of you, Notre Dame in the playoff. And I would argue that's because Bama kept it very vanilla in that game. But still, if we look at the end of the game, what the stat sheet said, Notre Dame, they didn't get manhandled. But Arkansas, the past few years defensively has played us close. PG, I got to agree with you here. They've got the means. They've got the talent. They're really well coached. Chris, what was your biggest thoughts when you've seen Alabama up to this point?
I'm just going to disagree with y'all outright and just say Arkansas, come on, man. against
Well, I
Missouri
don't have
State,
Bama
seeing that
losing to Arkansas. I just
Arkansas.
think Arkansas is going to be an intriguing
Look,
test based on the way
And
they're
and
built.
Chris, let me preface this before you get into this of why I think they could struggle with Arkansas. And I mean, we know they're going to struggle with Georgia because they struggled with Georgia last year. And you can even make this argument for Tennessee and Ole Miss, which, mind you, they have to go to Tennessee and to Ole Miss this year. And they struggled last year against Tennessee and Arkansas. Tennessee a little bit earlier. I can't remember how close that game was, but I know they struggled early in that game. And then Arkansas, I think that one came down to the wire. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yeah.
But
It was a closer game. Yeah.
these are, I mean, Tennessee's offense is explosive. Arkansas, they can, I mean, I don't think they're as explosive as Tennessee, but I think they can still score. And, you know, the Alabama defense might be the holding point, but still your offense has to be able to put up points when you're going up against an explosive offense. And so I look at what they did last year against these teams and what the teams are this year and how they got better and go, okay, like this Alabama team might be in trouble.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, you still look at Arkansas, you still look at a Tennessee, you still see some of the same things that were holding them back last year, right? That was holding them back a few years ago as well. And then Ty, just to go back, just to point it out, I mean, let's look at the history. Outside of those 2 years, right, when you guys were dominant and being able to blow people out or whatnot, right? Who was the quarterback before? Who was the quarterback after the Coker kid?
Jake Coker, it was Blake Sims.
Yeah. So, I mean, if my memory serves me correct, that year,
Wait,
the
no,
year
I think I have that wrong.
Okay. Even
No.
well, I think it was Blake Sims after him, right?
I think Blake Sims, then Jake Coker, and
Okay.
then we went on to Jalen.
Well, basically, what I was saying, even Jalen's first year, whatnot. What did Nick Saban do? Nick Saban played this style of ball, just piecing it together game by game, winning some close games, blowing out the teams that he needed to, but he pieced it together. I trust in the staff. I trust in Nick Saban. I trust in what he's preaching and what he's doing. And I'm saying, hey, it doesn't matter if they get a little bit too close to the sun. They're still comfortable. They're still fine. I don't think that this team is taking a step back necessarily. I just think that, hey, they haven't played the part. They haven't looked the part. But at the same time, when the adrenaline is going, the juice is going as well. The thing that I think we all need to do, especially with Arkansas, is just relax, because we all here think that KJ Jefferson's a pretty damn good quarterback. But at the same time, he still has a lot to do as far as improving on both sides of the ball. Go to the Cincinnati game. Go to the game last week. Did not look so great out there. I don't know what was going on with them last week. Maybe they were overlooking them and going and looking towards Texas A&M. But at the same time, it just didn't look great. That defense can be beat. I mean, it's not like they're just world beaters, but I'm not really concerned with what I saw. When I watched the game and watched the highlights, it was really more just defensive highlights. You guys made plays defensively and just basically ran with it from there. It wasn't like Bryce needed to do too much. Still threw three touchdowns, but I'm not so quick to press the panic button or say that they're going to lose a game this year with what I've seen. I think that another thing that you gotta put into account as well is, man, Sark was on that coaching staff. He knows Goldie. He knows Saban. Then also Gary Patterson is there helping PK with the defense. They prepared for this game for 2 or 3 months in advance. They circled this game. If you put them just like, okay, they got OU, ULM, Texas Tech, and then the very next week they play Bama, I don't think that game is all that close, because you don't have that much time to just sit there and prepare for one team, right? So I think we just need to pump the brakes a little bit on Bama and just say, like, hey, I'm going to give them more benefit of the doubt than I am just going to, give them doubt, right?
It's hard to bet against Nick Saban.
Yeah. And here's because I may have come across in the wrong manner. In no way, shape, or form am I sitting here expecting or saying, hey, I think Bama is going to drop 1, 2, or even 3 regular season games. That's not my intention with what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. My point is, you know why I feel so good about our offense right now? Because I don't care what the stats say. Bryce Young is one of the best college football players in the nation. That guy, when the moments are waning down, I trust him with the ball in his hand because he's done it over and over again for us. Georgia beat us. Sure. Is someone in the comments, if you want to bring up the Georgia loss in the way? Sure. Sure, nobody's perfect, but Bryce is batting about as well as you can. And let's be honest, any team in the nation would feel pretty darn good. So I feel good there. And Chris, you've heard me say this for a long time. I think there's a lot of talent in this Alabama wide receiver room. Do I think it's being shown right now? No. What good is potential if it's not being realized? But at the same time, I love the potential that's in the room. It just has to be realized. I think injuries are hurting us. Ultimately, this Bama defense, I think, is nasty. We can look, and maybe Will and Dallas don't have the sack numbers that people are thinking. But one thing we have to understand, offenses are getting the ball out as quick as possible to nullify those pass rushers because they know that's the last thing you want is to get behind the sticks. So in no way, shape, or form am I picking Alabama to lose those games. That being said, though, Chris, I have to remain consistent because if anybody here can pull up the receipts, I've been saying Arkansas is a team that I'm watching for Bama since, what would you say, January, March? I mean, that's kind of been the game I've highlighted in the SEC for a while. So I am very interested to see them. Overall, though, Bama's got the talent. And I think both of you are right. You never can bet against Nick Saban. He's earned the benefit of the doubt. Now, we have got an interesting team in college football, guys. A really interesting team. And Ohio, you asked about Michigan. We're going to get to Michigan. Thanks for joining in this evening. And yeah, I want to make this an overall channel. It kind of started off me doing Alabama content, and then the teams I was most familiar with: Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, and then it's spreading. So it's an overall channel. It's just that's where a lot of the viewers are right now. But before we talk about Michigan, there's a team right now, and yep, PG, you know exactly where I'm going. Exactly where I'm going. How are they not ranked? And I know this sounds blasphemous. We're talking about Kansas. They have been one of the most impressive fun teams this year. Guys, what's your takeaway with the Kansas Jayhawks? I mean, they are fun. They are so fun this year.
I'm here for it. I love OU football. OU's my team, but I'll root for the Jayhawks all day long to be undefeated up until they play OU and then continue to win all their games after. Everybody thought, all the Texas fans thought that this was the year that they were going to get past Kansas. It was going to be an easy game. No. This Kansas team looks like they have one of the most efficient offenses. They are rolling. Their defense is going. This is a fun team, and I'm excited for Kansas fans because the first game of the season, you saw the excitement around this program because their stadium was 80% full. 80% full. I don't think I've ever seen the Kansas Stadium 80% full for football. That was crazy to me. And then to go see them, beat Houston like on the road, like I just thought that was incredible. I'm here for it. This Kansas team needs to be ranked in the top 25, especially when they're being as dominant as they are on both sides of the ball. I think there's a little bit of bias just because of what Kansas has done over the past couple of years. Maybe the voters or whoever does not believe in Kansas. I don't know how I don't know how they do these rankings personally. I don't know. In my opinion, I think Kansas, could beat probably at least 5 or 6 teams ranking anywhere from 25 to 15. So they should definitely be in the top 25.
I completely agree. I could look. I'm not saying you got to rank them number 10, but they should be in that 20 to 25 range, right? They just should. Chris, what's your takeaway?
No, I mean, I agree. I agree with you guys. I think they should be ranked. I mean, they've beat the opponents, and I think that once they play Duke at home this weekend, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Which interesting fact. Sorry to cut you off. Interesting fact. This is the first time ever in football that all 4 blue blood basketball schools have all been undefeated this early in the season. First time ever.
That's cool. That's cool.
I'm still not buying too much stock in it, but at the same time,
fair.
it's a great story. But I mean, hey, give them love right now, but let's see how it plays out.
And here's the thing. Because Chris, to your point, Alpha's in here, and he's arguing the same thing. And Alpha, to y'all's point, you do have a point, right? Like, it's been Kansas. They haven't beaten any world beaters. Here's my counterpoint to both of you, though. You can only play who's in front of you, right? Alpha
Yeah.
says, I get that it's Kansas. Unless they're beating people 55-0, I'm asleep. I hear you. You can only play who's in front of you. And riddle me this one, right? If we look at the top 25 rankings, Miami is sitting there at 25. They have a loss. A&M is at 23. They have a loss. BYU is at 19. They have a loss. Pittsburgh has a loss. Kansas has just beat everybody in front of them, and I do think they have earned a place in this poll. I think it's been a lot of fun to watch. Lance Leopold is having a hell of a season, just a great time. K. Drew joins us this evening. K. Drew, thank you. K. Drew, I'm so sorry. Thank you for being here. He says, here's an eye-opening stat. Lance Leopold has a better road winning record than the last 4 coaches combined. That's dumb. That's astronaut. But this is what makes college football awesome, guys. Is stuff like this.
What was I gonna say? The Houston win was a bit surprising because Houston was up 14-0. They had the weather delay, but it's Holderson.
You
so
see?
I mean,
this was supposed to be Dana Holgerson's year. This was supposed to be the year he put it all together. And Jalen Daniels, which, by the way, I thought Bean was okay for Kansas standards, but Jalen Daniels coming in at quarterback for Kansas, I mean, he looks legit. I mean, he really does. And, you know, they beat Houston, but I was looking at their schedule and, you know, I said it earlier, but I think they could be 6-0 before they come play OU. Then on the back half of their schedule, it gets really brutal. But am I crazy to think that they can't beat Oklahoma State at home, go to Texas Tech, or maybe beat Kansas State and come out as a 8-win team at this point? Because, I mean, they've played good competition at West Virginia, at Houston. That's not like they played Sam Houston State, Tennessee Tech, and
I don't know. We'll
Hawaii.
have to see because Oklahoma State has a pretty damn good defensive line themselves. So I mean, we'll have to see if they can win that battle of the trenches. Because I mean, like I said, hey, I'm not saying pump the brakes, go ahead, rock chalk, Jayhawk, whatever y'all want to do. But I do remember when Jalen Daniels was running for his life an awful lot in that backfield. I remember when OU, I thought they killed him at one point, but at the same time, I watched them last year against OSU live, and I said, they connect on a few of these players right here. They're actually in this game for a long ass time. Now, obviously, OSU went ahead and blew them out, but for the better part of that first quarter and a half, I was like, I see what you're doing there. They look better. They look like a more well-oiled machine or whatnot. But I'm just like, win this game against Duke, put them in the top 25.
Matt says
that's the litmus test for them.
Yeah. So look, I mean, and it's just a lot of fun with Kansas right now. It's such a good time. Now, Ohio has been waiting patiently. He asked a question. We've been wanting to get it. I want to start with PG on this because Preston, you feel pretty strongly about this. Before we went live, you and I were talking about this, and that is Michigan. What are we feeling like with Michigan right now? And to kind of bleed into this, we're going to talk Michigan and the AP poll right now. All right. So first and foremost, what's your thoughts on Michigan? Because Ohio was wondering, are they a legit squad to this point?
Yeah, no, I definitely think Michigan's a legit squad. I actually have them in my Final Four, meaning they're going to have to beat Ohio State in the regular season. But that's because they're returning a running back in Blake Corum, who I didn't think was a terrible running back last year. And then you've got J.J. McCarthy starting at quarterback. I think that's a huge plus for this team. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, Jim Harbaugh has not been able to get it done in the past. But I think Jim Harbaugh, is finally in his resting place. He knows the NFL is not right now. You know, he's got his eyes set on his career and his legacy here at Michigan. And I really like what Michigan is returning up and down the board. I think if I remember looking correctly, Fox College Football, they put out a post on Instagram. And if I recall correctly, I think it was they returned I want to say it was 12 starters on the offense and the defense combined, which is huge. Now, yes, I know Ohio State's obviously returning more because they have the freshmen and sophomores that were starting. But ultimately, I thought, and I told you about it earlier, if you go and you give CJ Stroud a too high safety look the entire game and, you make them run on you, that Michigan defensive line can stop the run. And so I definitely think they have a shot in that Ohio State game, even though it's going to be in the shoe. Additionally, these AP rankings are trash. Jay brought up a good point the other day. We shouldn't be having AP rankings until probably, week 5 or 6 of college
I don't
football.
talk about them normally for this very reason, 100%.
Because I saw these came out, and Chris can allude to it. I was a little livid. These rankings are just absolute garbage. I don't understand how you can move. I understand Miami lost to Texas A&M, but Texas A&M lost to Appalachian State, and you didn't drop them out of the top 25, but yet you'll drop Miami 12 spots all the way down to number 25. And Florida, who I just think is not a good team because they're completely one-dimensional with Anthony Richardson, they're ranked number 20, and I think it's all because they beat Utah. There's no real basis to, I think Florida could go beat 5 or 6 of these teams ranked from 15 to 25. Because when I look at ranking a team in the top 25, I look at it and go, how many of these teams can they beat? Right? Same thing with USC. I know some people have USC in the top 4, and I say, okay, well, can USC go beat Clemson or Oklahoma? I don't think so. I don't think USC can really go beat probably Kentucky or Arkansas. I think the only team in the top 10 they could really beat would be Oklahoma State, and it would be a shootout. And so when I rank, I look at that. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what these voters do when they go in to vote, if they just vote for their favorite teams. But yeah, I mean, and you can see the bias in here just for Power 5. Like, why is Coastal Carolina not in here? Because Coastal Carolina has been a very consistent team over the past couple of years, and they're 3-0 now. Why are we not putting Group of 5 teams in here? Why is it just the Power 5 teams? Because if it's going to be this way, then college football should just branch off to where it's just Power 5, and then the Group of 5 have their own thing.
Well, especially this early on in the season, whenever we can't even hide behind the argument of, it's because, they've played 5 games into their conference schedule. You get what I mean? We can't even use the argument that it's, the Big 12 has played that. That's not even there. Chris, what's your thoughts on Michigan and then the AP?
Michigan is a good team. Michigan is better than what I thought they would be. One of the real interesting things, here's what I say. Okay. I think that it is a 3-team race in the Big Ten right now. Now, hear me out on this, okay? Obviously, you have Ohio State, then Michigan, then my next team, who's actually playing damn good football themselves, Penn State. Penn State could be another team that could really sneak in there and kind of shake some things up. But we love to talk about the Big 12 cannibalizing itself. Big 10 does the same thing. Year in and year out, there's somebody beating somebody who has no business doing that. A Purdue, a Northwestern, right? So I think I'm not going to say that they're real simply because we same conversation about that some people are having about OU. Who has Michigan played? But at the same time, they're going out there and doing what they need to do, which is shutting these teams out. And I mean, they're playing damn good football. So I want to see JJ McCarthy face some adversity, go to a real hostile environment instead of just playing in a big house with all those fans behind him and see how that goes. But like I said, I think it's a 3-team race for the Big Ten title. I think Ohio State, I still think they're leaps and bounds better than Michigan and Penn State, but on any given Saturday, you never really know. As far as the top 25, the AP top 25, really no problems with it. I mean, it's kind of, what are you thinking, Ty?
I yawned.
I was just thinking that AP rankings, I mean, just like Alpha said, it doesn't really matter until October anyway, but it's there for the narrative. It's there for the story, right? Is this team playing like a top 6 team or a top or number 5 team in the nation? So, I mean, I'm not really worried really that much about it because I think it's going to play itself out because, I mean, hell, look at OU. if we were going to the playoffs right now, you would have the benefit of saying, oh, well, guess what? We're 2 weeks away from the playoff, and guess who has to play the last game of the season? Michigan and Ohio State, Georgia and Alabama. You see what I'm saying? So you're just like, hey, I mean, it is what it is. So I'd like to see some of those teams. I mean, I'd like to see some group of 5 teams get in there and everything, but Coastal Carolina didn't have the best game. I think it was this past week or it's the second week. They haven't really looked like they have in the past 2 years. But then again, I mean, it's hard to say, oh, this team could not beat this team or this team could not beat that team. As hell, Texas State with Alabama, and we all thought that was going to be a blowout, but you just never know, you know. So yeah, to both points, I think Michigan is good. Michigan is real good right now. They look really good. Maryland's going to be an interesting game for them. Do you guys think Maryland's is gonna be able to put up a fight against them, or you think eventually Michigan wins this by 20?
I mean, I think Michigan wins it by 20, but I think Maryland's potentially going to try to put up some points. If Michigan goes in there and shuts down Maryland's offense, then I think you have real. I think you have a real conversation now to talk about putting Michigan at number 3.
Mutters just hit us with an interesting stat, and in fairness, Apocalypse, I think, is the one that got the ball rolling. By the way, Apocalypse, who's your team? Just out of curiosity, because I heard you say that you didn't know how y'all would fare about USC, and now I'm interested in who your team is. But the Big Ten East is 30-1, but they've only played 11 Power 5 teams. Look, I don't care if you've only played 11 Power 5 teams. You're 30-1. That's very impressive as a conference right now. Apocalypse, you're an Arkansas fan. I think that'd be an interesting game, Apocalypse. I truly do. Y'all have kind of the I mean, it makes sense. You're a hog. Yeah. I got a lot of love for y'all's program, and I got a lot of love for Sam Pittman. I think y'all make it interesting. But to answer the question I posed both of you, do I think Michigan is legit? Yes. I think Michigan is very legit. Now, I don't know if it has definitively been answered, because today I was looking at other things. Has McCarthy been named the starter? Is that put to bed now?
Yes,
okay.
He's been named the starter.
Thank God, because the offense just moves different with him there. I really like McCarthy there. But the Big Ten is going to answer all the questions we need. Chris, you made a great point. The Big Ten, you gave us 3 teams that you really like within the Big Ten. They're all going to play each other. These questions will be answered to us. How lucky were we? So Michigan is real. Now, Ohio, this is where PG and I were talking before the camera got rolling, and we were kind of talking about, okay, Michigan versus Ohio State. What does that look like? Personally, I took Ohio State in that matchup just because it's in the Horseshoe. I know what that environment is like. It's one of the games I've never seen a game in the Horseshoe, but I was doing a tour of Ohio State's law school when they played Penn State with Saquon Barkley, the year where Saquon returned the kick all the way, and I was right outside the stadium, and that place was jumping like very few college stadiums I've ever been around. I have Ohio State in that game, but my word, Michigan is going to be a very dangerous team. Now, Roger and PG, you've been asking, what is USC this year? USC is an intriguing team to me this year because offensively, they've answered all the questions. I don't think anybody is super surprised there. Still have questions defensively. I may have accidentally said US or OU over USC. Y'all get what I mean. We do a lot of talking. What are we feeling about USC, right? PG, you questioned about their status within the top 10. I think that you have to like where USC is right now, but you also have to acknowledge they still have work to go. You get what I mean? Like, you got to like where they are, but they're certainly not a finished product. What are we thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely in a better spot than they have been over the past couple of years. I don't think anybody's going to doubt that. But like, I heard Lincoln Riley back on Colin Cowherd's show again the other day. Oh my God, he's going to be on that man's show so many times over the next couple of years. But he was on that show, and, Colin Cowherd's asking him these questions about the defense. And, he's like, oh, well, we're number 1 in turnovers in the country right now. And I'm like, but bro, you haven't played anybody. and you play in the Pac-12, which in my opinion is a worse conference than the Big 12. So I would really hope that if you can put out a similar defense with Damani Jackson and some of those guys that you had at OU, that, yeah, you would be able to dominate the Pac-12 and be able to create turnovers. But I think there's some real question about this USC team as they start to have to go on the road and start playing some of these Pac-12 teams. I've heard a lot of rumors that USC should be a little concerned about this Oregon State team next week and how it's tough to play up at Oregon State. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've never paid attention to Oregon State, not really paid a whole lot of attention to the Pac-12. So I don't know how difficult it is to play up there. But Grinch will be fired. It's so far so good. I don't know if Grinch will be fired. You know,
no, but he gives a principled explanation. He doesn't like the bend, not break.
Yeah, but you know, USC's got a pretty easy schedule right now. You know, if you can get past Oregon State, you play Arizona State. They don't currently have a head coach. You should be able to beat Washington State. Your toughest game is at Utah, where I think you probably lose that game. On the road, College game day is probably there. Then you got to go to at Arizona, Cal, Colorado. You're probably winning all three of those games. UCLA, that's going to be a toss-up game, in my opinion. It's just like OU, Texas, but it's for USC. It's going to be a high-powered offensive game. Now, are people going to show up in the Rose Bowl for that game? I don't know. It's like they got 2,000 people. That Notre Dame game at the end of the season really intrigued me with Notre Dame at the beginning of the season, but now Notre Dame looks like poo-poo. So I don't know if Notre Dame is going to be able to put up a fight for USC. But what I'm trying to say is USC is going in the right direction, but they're not a top 10 team yet. And I would say that because look at all the times that OU looked like this at the beginning of the season, and then they would go to the Final Four and get completely smoked by an SEC team or by or I don't even think they played Ohio State. They did play Clemson a couple times because they don't have the talent, and the way that they play it doesn't transfer well on the defensive side of the ball to go play an SEC or an ACC team.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to when I say you got to like where they are now with an understanding of it is not a finished
Hold on. Did you say ACC?
Yes, because we lost to Clemson. What was I know we lost once in the playoffs. Did we play them twice? Because I know we played them once and we got smoked.
Look, USC. Look, this is the thing. Okay, Ty, Jance, all of us talked about this ages ago. What Lincoln Riley's doing up there is pretty much expected. We all knew that he was going to go up there and be able to do exactly what he's doing. I mean, when Lincoln Riley's actually invested, let me say it one more time. When Lincoln Riley's actually invested, yeah. But I mean, you're talking about Clemson and all the rest of that stuff. That's great. But I mean, hey, if Caleb Williams can take that step that Ty wants him to take and be able to play against those
he's one of the best players in the nation. There's no question.
Yeah. And I mean, what he's able to do right now with the weapons, it's hard to say this about Lincoln and USC, but they're loaded offensively. I mean, maybe not running game, but that Caleb Williams makes up for them not being that dominant or that physical in the trenches, to be honest with you, on the offensive line. I mean, that Caleb, I mean, it's just hard not to knock what they're doing right now, because at the end of the day, you can say they haven't played anybody, but still putting up 60 points a game. And I mean, go ahead.
And to piggyback off of you look at Caleb Williams, you look at Raleek Brown. Now, Chris, and I know this isn't popular, but how many times did you and I talk when the camera was off and say, man, Raleek Brown with Lincoln Riley is going to be a treat for all college football fans to watch. But you also have Travis Dye. And to your point, you have Caleb, who has taken a noticeable step this year in his development. He looks more confident passing the football. He looks like he's understanding the defenses in front of him. To your point, I completely agree with you.
It's just hard to discount what he's doing. Now, yeah, I think that the Oregon State will be an interesting game, because what does Lincoln Riley love to do? He loves to go and struggle against that team that you're just like, what? Obviously, you know, K-State's these past few years, but Iowa State's even before they had what they had. Hell, Texas Tech from time to time. So it's just interesting to see, man. I think that they're doing exactly what you thought they would do, but when they run into a Utah, who they have to play when they run into Utah. Is it going to is that's going to be pretty much the litmus test for them? And I think that the UCLA USC matchup, it's hard because you don't really know what you're going to get from their quarterback, and you don't really know what kind of play calling you're going to get from Chip Kelly, which is honestly one of the more odd things in college football nowadays. Because Chip Kelly, last time we saw,
Great point.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a great point.
It's been pretty odd because, I mean, if you go back to the 2019 Rose Bowl game I say Rose Bowl game, but the 2019 game with Jalen, when Jalen was the quarterback or whatnot, it just was weird because you were like, this doesn't feel like a Chip Kelly style of offense. But at the same time, they have two running backs that they're particular about. If one of them didn't go to the league already, but they have a good offense as well, and they can slow the game down. Who's going to be that team that actually says, you know what, we're going to be more physical than you, and we're going to slow this game down? Who's going to be that team? Because if you go back to Stanford, you thought that's what Stanford would do, but Stanford wanted to play with them. And Stanford played right into Lincoln Riley's scheme of allowing Lincoln Riley to put all the stress in the world on those safeties. So with that being said, who's going to be that team that says, you know what, I'm going to take the K-State, Tulane, West Virginia, Nebraska. I can keep going down the list, right? Who's going to take that blueprint and say, hey, I'm going to slow this game down and make this a real physical game for you, Lincoln? You're going to have to beat me playing my style of ball, not your style.
Well, it's definitely going to be Utah, but they're going to have to potentially play an Oregon or a Washington team in this Pac-12 championship, because I do think USC is going to get to the Pac-12 championship. My thing is, and you brought up how awesome this offense is, and I'm not going to doubt you on that because they've got a lot of talent. But do you think that this is Lincoln Riley's best offense that he's ever had? Because I would argue some of those other ones that he had with Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield could have rivaled this offense that he has at USC.
No, if I may, way
ahead.
too early to tell, in my opinion. Chris, I'll let you go.
Oh no, I was gonna say it's weight. No, it's not weight. No, it's not as dominant, but they have something that some of those offenses didn't have, which is they have, outside of Hollywood and CeeDee Lamb, who else had like that type of star name? You get what I'm saying? So
D.D. Westbrook.
Well, no, I'm talking about on the same team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, like, if you look at this team, you got Jordan Addison, you got Caleb Williams, got Jordan Addison, then you got Mario Williams.
Well, one year you did have DD and Sterling on the same team, and it might have been 2 years, I think.
So for me, when I look at it, it's just way too early to tell. Yeah. And look, this USC offense, it's, to Roger's point, it's so much fun to watch. It genuinely is. It's a ton of fun. Ohio, thank you for sticking around, man. And look, if I can get more views on the Big Ten content, I'll roll it out. I want to talk about Big Ten football. I'd love to start learning more about it. So yeah, absolutely. But kind of refocusing, USC is so interesting because the offense, it's exactly what we thought. Chris and I don't know how many conversations we had, PG, when the cameras weren't rolling, being like, whether people want to admit it or not, Lincoln is Lincoln. He is one of the best offensive minds in the game of football, right? Yeah. That's not to say that evolution doesn't need to happen. Every great coach needs to continue evolving, right? That's just the name of the game.
When he's invested, he's one of them.
No doubt. And to Kirby's Visor's point, Utah, we can never count out Kyle Whittingham, right? Just a really well-coached team. That offensive coordinator for Utah, ladies and gentlemen, book it right now. That's a name to watch for some coaching hires this offseason. Love that. Washington is one of the most fun teams in college football. We didn't get an opportunity to talk about them this evening. Michael Penix Jr. is electrifying right now with the Huskies. I mean, if you guys aren't tuning in, please do me a favor. Check out some Washington. Roger, I think we're meaning if they make it to the Pac-12 championship. That's kind of the implication right here, not regular season. And Oregon, I don't know who Oregon is. Kirby. Dan Lanning. Dan. Yeah. My man, he gets it. I don't know what Oregon is this year, because I don't know about Bo Nix at quarterback there.
That's the answer. There, but Oregon is whoever Bo Nix is. That's
my fault then, Roger. I didn't see that Chak asked, so that's on me. Now, before we leave, I'm going to ask one fair or unfair. So, chat, I need you hands on keyboard right now. Get ready to go. Typing lesson for today. I need y'all to hit me with fair or unfair as quick as possible. And this is what I'm going to leave you with. When I look at this AP, and gentlemen, you're going to like this. Oklahoma comes in at number 6. But if we're simply going off of what we've seen this year, can we in good conscience put Clemson ahead of Oklahoma? Because if I'm just looking at what I've seen in 2022, I think right now I have a few less questions about OU than I do Clemson. Fair or unfair?
I said fair because I believe Clemson has a little bit like they're more like they've shown a little bit more consistency on both sides. And I don't know, like I kind of want OU to fly under the radar for a little bit. I think it's better for us to fly under the radar. I don't want us to get, up to 5 or 4-3 and for all eyes to be on Oklahoma. I mean, of course, they could be better than Clemson, but I don't know. Like, I'm still high on DJ, and I think Clemson, could potentially, if they put it all together, still go win a national championship with DJ at the helm, because Georgia showed us last year you can win a national championship with a subpar quarterback. And I know everybody wants to harp on DJ, but DJ's kind of on track to have his career season this year. He's done what he almost did in that 2020 season where he played 9 games. 2 of them were full games, but the other 7 were ones where he came in late, and everything else. But I believe that year he only had 930 total yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. This year, and he had a 66% completion percentage. This year, he's thrown for like 630 yards, 64% completion percentage. He's thrown for 5 touchdowns and 1 interception. And so I don't know like where all the criticism's coming for DJ. I think it's because you have a 5-star back there who I think a lot of people are really high on, and they just want to see him over DJ because DJ had a bad season last year. But I believe that if Clemson and OU were to match up today, that game could swing either way. There's not a definite, OU's going to beat Clemson or Clemson's going to beat OU.
Yeah. Chris, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that PG probably thinks Landry Jones is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play for OU. Because statistically, he's great, right? No, come on, man. No, DJ has not done anything this year. He's putting up gaudy numbers. That offense is remedial. It's still more of the same. It's still the same sample size. That defense can be got. If you go back, I go back to the Georgia Tech game. Georgia Tech showed you, hey, this is how you beat them. But hey, guess what? You actually got to connect on the passes. You actually can't throw the ball away. All the rest of that, right? So, I mean, I think it's unfair right now. I think you should have slid in front of them. But hey, like we said today, they're giving the AP poll is basically giving the writers are giving Clemson the benefit of the doubt because Clemson has done exactly what they needed to do, which is win. So, I mean, keep them in front of us, do that or whatever. It'll all play out. But at the same time, I can't really sit here and say that you wouldn't be able to just beat them or hell, even dominate them because with DJ, I mean, really, what are you going to get? He's been hell. We talked about Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond, you can put them into the same boat. He may have more upside, more potential. He may be better than Kellen Mond, but in my mind, no. I can't sit here and say that if he's at the helm.
Yeah, but I mean, he's putting up similar stats to some of the other top quarterbacks that we would talk about. Like specifically, like if you go match his stats up with Bryce Young. I mean, outside of the completion percentage, like they look fairly similar. I mean,
Furman, Georgia Tech, and La Tech, that's great. He's gonna have to do that in ACC play and continue that because Wake Forest is gonna want to have a conversation. North Carolina's going to want to have a conversation. Pitt's definitely going to want to have a conversation. It's a lot of teams that are lining up. Miami is still a young season. Got to see if they can regroup and they can get back into it. And then hell, I mean, let's just be real. I don't know what's going down there in Florida State with the quarterback. Somebody in the chat can tell me if Travis is back or is he not. But hell, if Travis is back, that could be another potential upset as well. I mean, the ACC, I'm not going to say they're low. NC State. That's another team that Clemson always, not always, but they've struggled with from time to time. And that's going to be another really good defense and another good test for him. So I want to see what he looks like during league play before I can say all of that.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a timeline for Jordan Travis yet, but the thing is I think it's too early to give up on DJ. I think it's too early.
No, it's too early. I agree with you on that, but as far as just kind of what we've seen, the small sample size, it's real gaudy though. Go ahead, Ty.
Well, okay, so here's I'm gonna Kirby. I'm not gonna say you're wrong because I said earlier Bryce has not played the best. I would put that more as a product of the wide receivers are not getting open. And if you look at the route layering Bill O'Brien is calling, we're doing just perplexing route layering. When you have a chance, Kirby, go and check out and just watch the receivers. You'll get exactly what I'm talking about because you and I have talked on a previous stream about this with another team. You'll get exactly what I'm talking about. And that's not to say Bryce has been perfect. You're 100% right. I just am in the camp that it's a little bit more exterior factors than it is Bryce Young. To kind of round this out, right? First and foremost, Mutters, thank you for joining us this evening. New to the channel. Awesome to have you here. This is always what we love to do, as well as Carl being a USC fan, enjoying the time tonight. Glad to have you. Bama Standard said, is Bryce not playing his best because the wide receivers and Bill O'Brien? Look, I that's the exact camp I'm in, Bama Standard. That's the exact camp I'm in. But to kind of answer this question, let us all out of here to go enjoy some Monday Night Football. OU to me should be in front of Clemson. And look, I have people in the chat saying Oklahoma hasn't played anybody yet. First and foremost, we're only 3 weeks into the season. You can only play who's on your schedule. I'm not arguing that Oklahoma took out a ranked team. Nobody on the panel has done that. But it doesn't matter whether you play Kent State or whether you play Georgia. There's something to learn in every single football game that occurs. It's all about finding the lesson. And Oklahoma right now is a complete football team. Oklahoma is a very complete football team. And because of that, I put them over Clemson. I do. I just think if we're looking at this season in particular, Oklahoma has looked like the better football team. Now, outside of that, we got some people saying fair. Bill O'Brien. Yeah, Bill O'Brien's the just perplexing to say the least. Gentlemen, that's about all I have for this evening. I'm going to let everybody get out of here so that everybody can go enjoy some Monday Night Football. We got people saying Bryce Young is saving Bama. You're right. You are right, Bill O'Brien. But guys, PG, Chris, where can the people find you?
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube or Apple, Google, or Spotify podcast, just the PG Show. You guys can find me on Twitter, the PG Show _. Come check us out. We talk a lot about all different teams in college football. You'll hear me jump on the bandwagon for a lot of teams, but we also do a lot of player interviews. We actually got one for an upcoming recruit that I am doing tonight that should be coming out maybe on Friday for one of a highly recruited running back coming out of high school in 2025, Caden Knighton, out here in Wynnewood, Oklahoma. So, yeah, come check us out.
Hey, guys, you guys can follow me at, well, it's not on the screen anymore, Chris with a K. And you can follow my guy at Seth Oliveris as well. Follow us at the Horns Down Pod, Horns Down Podcast on YouTube. And you can find us on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. So definitely hit us up. Got some content we're going to try to bump out. And yeah, and these guys are usually on the show as well. So for sure, check us out.
Yeah, guys, we do this every Monday between 5 to 6 o'clock. We're streaming Fridays, another stream coming. I've got some ventures coming that I'll be announcing later this week, some more stuff coming. But it's always a great time. Thank you to everyone being here this evening. Can't wait to see you on Friday, 5:30, 6 o'clock, where we will be previewing the games ahead. Can't wait to see y'all. Thanks for joining in. That's it. See ya.